The transplant coordinator looked at my test results, frowned, and quietly asked the nurse to verify my identity one more time. I remember watching her compare my driver's license to the chart, then looking back at the screen as if she hoped the numbers would change. They didn't. A minute later, she disappeared behind a glass door with my file. When she came back, she didn't call me by name. She simply said, "Mr. Carter, the nephrologist would like to speak with you alone." I wasn't in that hospital because I was sick. I was there because my 12-year-old daughter, Emma, was running out of time. Her kidneys had failed 6 months earlier after a rare autoimmune disease attacked them. Without warning, 3 days a week she sat in a dialysis chair that was almost bigger than she was, smiling at nurses she shouldn't have needed to know at her age. When the doctors finally said I was healthy enough to donate one of my kidneys, I thanked God before I thanked them. I thought I was about to save my little girl. Instead, I was about to hear 7 words that would silence an entire transplant team. Those 7 words didn't just change Emma's future. They destroyed a lie that had survived nearly 13 years. Before I tell you what the doctor said, I need you to understand something. This isn't a story about revenge. If you're waiting for me to celebrate someone's downfall, you're going to be disappointed. Because the only thing I wanted that day was for my daughter to live. Everything else became meaningless. If you've ever loved a child so completely that you would have traded years of your own life for one more day of theirs, stay with me. This story hurts before it heals. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 43 years old, and I've spent the last 20 years as a firefighter in Columbus, Ohio. I've walked into burning buildings without thinking twice. I've crawled through smoke so thick I couldn't see my own hands. But nothing in my career ever scared me the way hearing the words, "Your daughter needs a kidney transplant," did. Because fires don't break your heart. Watching a little girl smile while pretending she isn't terrified does. Emma wasn't just my daughter. She was the reason I got out of bed every morning. The kid who still texted me good luck before every shift. The one who insisted we stop for chocolate milkshakes after every father-daughter movie night. Even when it was snowing outside, people always told me she had my laugh. I used to think that was enough to prove the world made sense. I had no idea that one blood test was about to prove how little I actually knew. And it all started 13 years earlier. 13 years earlier, my life looked so ordinary that I honestly believed ordinary would last forever. I met my wife, Lauren, at a neighborhood 4th of July festival just outside Columbus. She was the kind of woman who could make strangers feel like old friends within 5 minutes. I was awkward, covered in soot from an overnight shift at the firehouse, and somehow she still agreed to let me buy her a lemonade. A year later, we were married. When Lauren told me she was pregnant, I cried before she did. Emma was born on a cold February morning at Riverside Methodist Hospital. The nurse placed a tiny bundle in my arms, and I remember whispering, "Hi, sweetheart. I've been waiting for you." From that moment on, my world revolved around her. I was there for every first. Her first steps across our living room, her first bicycle ride, when she crashed into our mailbox and laughed harder than I did, the first time she called me from school just because she forgot her lunch and knew I'd bring it. Every birthday ended the same way, with Emma falling asleep on my shoulder before we even made it home. People used to joke that she was my shadow. Truthfully, I was hers. Being a firefighter meant missing holidays and birthdays sometimes, but I never let a missed shift become a missed childhood. If I worked Christmas morning, we'd celebrate Christmas at night. If I missed her school play, I'd ask her to perform the entire thing again in our living room. She always did. Lauren would sit on the couch pretending to be the audience while Emma took dramatic bows after every scene. Those were the nights. I thought life had finally become exactly what I'd always wanted. Then little things started changing. Lauren became distant. At first, it was easy to blame stress. She had started working for a medical software company, traveling more often, meeting new clients, staying overnight for conferences. I trusted her completely. Trust isn't something you think about while you still have it. You only notice it after it starts disappearing. Then Emma began getting sick. It started with headaches, then constant exhaustion, bruises that appeared for no reason. By the time specialists finally figured out what was happening, our lives had become a revolving door of hospitals, blood tests, medications, and impossible conversations. The diagnosis came with words no parent is ever prepared to hear. A rare autoimmune disease, progressive kidney failure, dialysis, transplant. I watched my little girl apologize for being sick. That broke something inside me. From that day forward, Nothing mattered except finding a way to save her. I volunteered for every test before the doctors even asked. I never imagined those tests would uncover a truth that had been quietly waiting beneath the surface of our lives since the day Emma was born. And when Lauren realized what those results might reveal, for the first time in our entire marriage, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. I didn't understand Lauren's reaction at first. While I was signing another stack of consent forms, she kept finding reasons to pull the transplant coordinator into the hallway. Every time I looked up, she'd stop talking the second our eyes met. I told myself she was scared. I was scared too. Fear makes people act strangely. The compatibility testing took several days. Blood work, imaging, more blood work, psychological evaluations. Every step brought us closer to the surgery that, I believed, would give Emma her life back. Then came the phone call. "Mr. Carter, we'd like you to come in this afternoon. We'd prefer to discuss your results in person." Something about the nurse's voice made my stomach tighten. Hospitals don't ask healthy donors to come in for routine good news. When I arrived, Lauren was already there. She wasn't sitting beside Emma's room. She was pacing the hallway. The moment she saw me, her face lost what little color it had left. "Ethan," she whispered, Maybe we should wait." "Wait for what?" She didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed my arm. "If they ask questions, just let me do the talking." Those words didn't make sense. What questions? I was donating a kidney, not standing trial. Minutes later, the transplant nephrologist invited me into a private consultation room. 2 nurses were already inside. So was a hospital social worker. That was the moment I knew something had gone terribly wrong. Doctors don't fill a room with extra people for routine conversations. The physician placed my lab report on the table but didn't slide it toward me. She folded her hands and looked directly into my eyes. "I've reviewed your compatibility testing twice," she said quietly. "There appears to be an unexpected finding." I glanced toward Lauren. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring at the floor. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't keep them folded in her lap. I'd seen people look exactly like that before, right before they confessed to something they could no longer hide. The doctor took a slow breath. "I need to ask you a very personal question." "Of course. To the best of your knowledge, are you Emma's biological father?" The room became completely silent. I almost laughed. "What kind of question is that?" The doctor didn't smile. She simply turned the report around so I could see it. Then she spoke the 7 words that stopped time itself. "These results cannot identify you as her father." No one moved. No one spoke. I heard Lauren begin to cry before I even looked at her. And in that single moment, everything I believed about my life, my marriage, and the little girl I loved more than my own heartbeat began to unravel. For a few seconds I couldn't breathe. Every memory of Emma came rushing back. Her first steps, her first bike ride, the nights she fell asleep on my shoulder. Not one of those memories changed. I looked at Lauren. She was crying before she could even speak. "I wanted to tell you," she whispered. I shook my head. "No. You wanted to keep the secret until you couldn't anymore." Through tears, she admitted that before we got engaged, she'd briefly reunited with an old boyfriend. When she discovered she was pregnant, she convinced herself I was the father. As the years passed, doubt became fear, and fear became 13 years of silence. The doctor gently interrupted us. "Ethan, our priority is still Emma." She explained they had already contacted the biological father. A few days later, his test results came back. He wasn't a compatible donor. The room fell silent again. I looked at the doctor and asked, "Then what happens now?" "We wait for a donor." So that's what we did. I never left Emma's side. Every dialysis session, every hospital visit, every difficult day. 3 months later, we got the call we'd been praying for. A deceased donor kidney had become available. The transplant was successful. When Emma finally woke up, she reached for my hand. "Dad, you're still here." I smiled through tears. I was never going anywhere. Months later, after she'd recovered, Lauren finally told Emma the truth. That evening, Emma came to my house and sat beside me on the porch. She asked the question I'd feared most. "So, you're not my biological dad?" I took her hand. "No." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she smiled. "I don't care. You've been my dad every single day of my life." At that moment, I realized something. DNA can explain where a child comes from. It can never explain who stayed. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more unforgettable stories every week. And tell me in the comments, what makes a real parent? Shared blood or unconditional love?